Okay, now the next thing I want to talk about is that this idea of the evolution of uh, consciousness, the evolution of free will, the evolution of the senses. Now, you have made this comment a couple times that the senses evolved to pay close attention to whatever the source of the sensations is, the real world. And it is the real world in the sense that we're calling it the real world. If we live in a dream or the matrix, whatever, that is the real world. And the senses have evolved to appear to have evolved to observe that. But the consciousness, which I think is very evolved in humans, has evolved to watch the mental process itself. So that would be the same law of accuracy. So that's just to show that they're similar. I mean, the conscious mind watches the mind itself. It's able to look into the mind. For that matter, to metaphorically feel and taste the mind. Literally as well, though, in the sense that we can have a memory of a taste, and that's like the mind generating its own recollections given to the consciousness, and the consciousness then experiences that flavor just as it does with the real world, but not as strongly, right? So not just as it does, not as strongly. It's more faint, but it can be very strong if the time and emotion is strong, or if you happen to be asleep and everything else is quiet, and even though it's not as intense, you can normalize yourself to it, and it can be seem even more intense than reality. Though if reality comes along, it'll wake you up and disturb the dream easily. Still, for you, the dream can seem very powerful because the consciousness has all of the senses that the body has. And it has no doubt evolved that because it understood the physical senses. But did the will come first or last? See, in this matrix thought experiment, the point is just this. There is a time in history of evolution when we didn't have eyes. But would we have still had will? As an animal, we would have had other senses, right? So, which is this just a chicken and the egg problem? Which came first? Well, possibly. But the point of the Matrix example, which I just use again because that's common. I mean, the last time I thought a lot about this subject, the Matrix hadn't been made, and this is the brain in a box hypothesis. What if you're just a brain in a box being fed all this information through electrodes or something? Okay. The point is, if you were being fed all of this information, then yeah, which requires the other thing. If you're being fed a bunch of information, then you could still have will. But if you're being fed the illusion of your will, then you don't get any other senses. You don't have a will to receive those senses. And this might seem confusing to you because here's the other thing that I have to get into, which is that it's this error of objectivism. The error of objectivists. I mean, you could be very good modeling objectivity, just like you can be good. Like Ptolemy had a good, very accurate system for calculating where the planets were going to be. He had to bend over backwards and make a really complicated system, but you can do that. And what happens when objectivity is people get a little bit lazy and they forget. You see, with objectivity, they're always trying to look from the outside. So with free will, you're trying to tell me, well, if I took a brain, Piero, and I chopped it up, I wouldn't find anything that was free will. Just like I wouldn't find an organ that was the ego. But so this was like, you use this other example that I'm going to get to about a description of our conscious experience also describes the information process in the processing in the physical brain. Well, as we both agree, and I'll get to that, no, it doesn't. Because if you chop up the brain, that what you find there does not actually have to look like what the brain can do. If I'm running Open Office, Microsoft Word in my computer, and I break open my computer, I don't find little bits of Microsoft Word in there. They're just numbers. yeah, they add up to make Microsoft Words, and you look at it, the Lego blocks of it all. Of course, it all works out. You can make Microsoft Word. That's the point of a Turing machine, though, is that there's a very arbitrary mapping from this numeric computational model, metaphorically using numbers as metaphors, into the world of words and pictures and everything that can be conveyed by pictures, which is a lot of non-computational things, like my behavior, which is non-computational. Now, onto this thing I wrote down. A description of our conscious experience also describes the information processing in the physical brain. No, I don't believe that. So evidently you don't believe that. I don't believe that. I don't believe that's necessary at all. And the reason is because you seem to want to do what is the classical objective process. You want to look at the brain, you want to chop it up and look for the will. But that won't work in this case. It works in a lot of cases. You can look at the human body and find muscles and figure out how the body is able to move in the directions it's able to move and why it can't move in directions it's not able to move. But the will isn't like that. Now, we might find it sometime in some structure, maybe. We'll figure out how the pieces add together and make it possible. We'll figure out the equivalent of the Turing machine that tells us why we can convey all this other stuff. Why is there these simple set of rules? You know, we might find the simple set of rules that enables will. Okay. But still, we haven't done that yet. That's not the basis of why people believe in the will. It's because we're subjective. I'm in here. I can see what's going on in here. I don't actually have to pretend to be outside of myself, looking back at myself, and then asking myself, do I see free will? No, you don't see free will. You don't see free will when you're on the outside of it. The free will is seen when you're in the inside, looking out. And we can do that in philosophy. We can do that in any art or science that we want. We can be on the inside looking out. Now, there's advantages to being objective. People think of me in my life as a very objective person, you know, fair, and all, you know, I take evidence, I do not rush to judgment. I'm a very objective person, and yet I'm a subjectivist. Why? Because as an objective person, okay, believing in science, believing in objective reality, trying to get my philosophical principles from science, I found out that we are subjects. You know, we simulate the idea of standing outside, but we're always in here getting information.